today's affordable housing, various aspects of permanent supportive housing and housing the homeless in a pandemic. We will have a panel of speakers to join us to share their insights on this complex challenge of protecting homeless from pandemic exposure. Excuse me. I'd first and foremost like to thank our sponsors of this series, both Virginia Housing and the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. Without their support, we would not have been able to do this fall speaker series, which has been a success with quite a bit of participation that we're really excited about how it has gone. Today's presentation is intended to be interactive. We do encourage questions, but because there's going to be a large amount of people and interested stakeholders, we'd ask that your questions come at the end of the presentation if you want to ask them aloud. Otherwise, go ahead and put them in the chat box. We're going to be monitoring the chat box throughout the session so that when we get to the Q&A, we can address your answers if they haven't been addressed live. We're going to gather all of your questions and respond to those via email at the conclusion of this event and circulate all of those answers so that everybody has them. Hopefully we'll have time to discuss at least a couple of those live and in person. I am going to stop here so that I don't go too far into Keith's. I'm going to introduce Keith Smith. He is the chair of the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership. Allow him to say a brief welcome, and then Keith will kick off by introducing our panelists.
Thank you, Christine. As Christine mentioned, my name is Keith Smith. I'm the chair of the Regional Housing Partnership, and I do offer my apologies for signing on late, but there were trees down on Route 53 because of some silly ice storm, and I needed to reroute myself around. So Christine, did we give a shout out to Charlottesville Association of Realtors and Virginia Housing already? Great, thank you for doing that. So, it looks like the first featured speaker, as I'm looking at the agenda, and I apologize, I'm quickly going through my thing here. I'm going to introduce Anthony Haro, who runs and manages some awesome stuff over at the Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless. Then we're going to introduce Julia Anderson, who is with the Virginia Supportive Housing, and then Colin Arnold, which was the Arnold Design Studio, which I'm actually excited to hear from. But to get us a little bit back on track, it looks like, Anthony, you are up next, sir.
All right, good morning. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. All right. It is good to be here today. I appreciate the invitation to speak about homelessness in general, but also about, maybe most importantly, solutions to it. So to begin, oh, wait, this is my last slide. Hold on a second. There we go. So I'm with the Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless, and we are a body dedicated to leading collaborative efforts to end homelessness in our area. And you know, one of the things that's unique about this area is that it's kind of a urban-ish center surrounded by a lot of rural communities. And so our service area actually covers City of Charlottesville, Albemarle, Fluvanna, Louisa, Nelson, and Greene counties. So that's the area that we work in. And our mission is to create, you know, a community of services and resources that will allow us to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. So that's what we're dedicated to. And we really work to empower direct service providers in the community working directly with people experiencing homelessness. To begin, this statement I think is really important to share with you all. Everyone deserves a safe place to call home. And it's something I believe. It's what drives my work in homeless services and with TJAC. And I think it's really important to stop and just, you know, kind of take a moment to appreciate and really like look at that statement, and also just kind of ask yourself what that means for us as a community to actually make this a reality. But it's a truth that I believe it's a human right. I think we all deserve a safe place to call home. And I think it's also possible for us to get to a place where people can have access quickly to safe, affordable housing. So that's the foundation. I want to talk a little bit about local homelessness to give you just an idea of what the picture looks like locally. And then we'll talk about some solutions to it, primarily permanent supportive housing, which is the focus for today. And then also about why that's so important in a pandemic. So we'll get into a bit of that too. So I'll go over some local statistics. This is a graph of what's called the point in time count. And this is a count of people, the number of people experiencing homelessness at a given point in time. So basically on any given day, these are the numbers of people that have experienced homelessness back from 2010 through 2020. We will do another effort in the community to document, interview people experiencing homelessness in January of 2021. But this represents data as through January of 2020. So you can see how homelessness has changed over time. The thing I'll draw your attention to is the blue line, which is the number of people living in an emergency shelter. That's most people experiencing homelessness in our community. And then there's the orange line, which is transitional housing, which is kind of an extended type of residential program that's available locally through Maca Hope House. And then the orange line, the yellow line, which is a little bit hard to distinguish from the orange, is the number of people living outside. So those are the three categories of people that we focus on at Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless in terms of people experiencing literal homelessness. And the interesting thing there with the yellow line is that it hasn't changed all that much for a long time. And that's something that we really need to do better on as a community and really address. That number has stayed pretty consistent for the last 10 years. And we'll talk about, permanent supportive housing directly affects populations of folks who traditionally live outside. So that's just one interesting part of this I wanted to draw attention to. A little bit of the population, who is experiencing homelessness locally. Gender, it's predominantly male, 61% male, 38% female, and about 1% identify as transgender or non-binary for their gender. In terms of household makeup, about 18% were people in families and 82% were individuals. In terms of age ranges, the largest age range group is adults over 55. So it definitely represents an aging population locally. And then race, significantly overrepresented in the population are Black and African American community members at 36%. White makes up about 58%, and then other races about 6% of the population. So another interesting thing is important to understand is that homelessness is dynamic. So those numbers represented the number of people at a point in time, but it doesn't really work like that in practice, right? People fall in and out of homelessness, and it's important for us to understand that when we also try to figure out how to solve homelessness as well. And so this is a graph that shows the distinction between the number of people on a given night, and that's that orange line. So that's the number of people, on average on a given night experiencing homelessness in our community. And again, that represents people in shelters or in transitional housing or on the street. It does not represent people living doubled up with friends or family or living in hotels. And that's an important distinction because that's another really, really important aspect for our community to focus on, people with housing instability. But these are people who are what we call literally homeless, so having no other place to stay except for a shelter or in their car or outside, that kind of thing. So that orange line you can see is the number of people out on a given night, but that blue line is the number of people who have come through our homeless service system in a year. And so you can see that that number has steadily increased over the last 6 years or so, while the number of people on a given night has stayed pretty consistent. Actually, that's a good sign, because what we don't want to see is the number of people remaining homeless increasing, right? What this means is that more people are actually using our services, using shelter, getting connected to housing through housing programs, but they're not remaining homeless, and that's really important. So it's a good trend, but what we need to see is that orange line decreasing. And that's how we, that's what we want to see for us to be able to get to a functional end of homelessness. And we need something to change in our community for that to actually happen. And that's why permanent supportive housing is so key. Another interesting thing to note is that among people who experienced homelessness over the last year in our community, about 68% reported that it was their first time, basically, in experiencing homelessness, at least in our community. About 32%, it was not their first time experiencing homelessness. And so I think this kind of goes against some of the preconceived ideas about homelessness, is that it's the same kind of folks time and time again. And that's true for a population, but it's a relatively small portion of it. It's 1/3 basically, where 2/3, this is their first time. They've fallen on hard times and they're experiencing homelessness for the first time. So that this little slice that multiple times speaks to a population that we're focusing on today for the presentation. Those are folks in our community who don't have the opportunities or the resources themselves, or have extensive barriers to getting into housing, and remain homeless time and time again over time. And a lot of times that's what we consider chronically homeless. These are folks in our community who have experienced long histories of homelessness, been on the streets for years, and have disabling conditions, whether that's mental health, substance use, a physical disability, or a chronic health condition. And this population of folks represents, some of the most vulnerable, medically vulnerable, physically vulnerable people in our community that have been living on the streets for years with disabling conditions, very complicated health conditions. And without resources dedicated specifically for this population, that group of people who remain homeless over time, they're going to continue remaining homeless in our community. And that's not okay. We need to do something about it. And permanent supportive housing directly addresses that issue. So a cool success story locally is, you can see this is the number of chronically homeless people in our community since 2012. You can see it was quite high in 2012 with 76 people identified as chronically homeless. And then the Crossings opened in 2012. And many of you are probably familiar with the Crossings. It's a development by Virginia Supportive Housing, who will speak next, in downtown Charlottesville, that had half of the units dedicated for people that were chronically homeless, living on the streets for years with disabling conditions. And so you can see really clearly in the data over the next 2 years, that number dropped in half. So you can see how directly this affected chronic homelessness in our community. And then you can also see from there, also interestingly, that the number, besides kind of an anomaly in 2017, the number of chronically homeless folks has really been flat, if not starting to rise again, because we haven't really had the same injection of new housing opportunities and supportive housing opportunities for people in this population. I will say that we are, our community has the ability to get right to the threshold of ending chronic homelessness. As you can see with our numbers, it's not that many folks. 46 people we identified in January experienced chronic homelessness locally. With about that same number of units, new units in our community, we would get right to that threshold of ending chronic homelessness in our community, which would be a tremendous accomplishment, and also the right thing to do for those people's lives. So, to sum that up, basically, this equation is really important. And I use this a lot when I talk about homelessness, but homeless plus home equals not homeless. And that can't be overstated. I know it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it is actually a really important thing to, again, stop and just appreciate, because it is really easy to see all the effects or the side effects of homelessness and think that those need to be addressed to solve the issue. For instance, substance abuse, mental health, even employment. When at the end of the day, homelessness is really a lack of a safe place to call home. It's a lack of housing, right? And there are far more people in poverty in housing than there are not. There are far more people with substance abuse issues living in housing than those who don't live in housing. Far more people with disabling conditions, mental health issues living in housing than those who are not. So it really is housing issue, and to solve the issue, we need to focus on housing first and foremost. All the supportive services are key, but the supportive services can only go so far if we don't solve the underlying issue, which is housing. So that's crucial. I will say that ending homelessness was always a public health response, but that is especially true in a pandemic, and that has been highlighted in a really unique way, because having safe private rooms for people to, be in and isolate and quarantine themselves in not only helps limit the spread of COVID-19 to those people experiencing homelessness, but also for the rest of the community. And that's so crucial. We have, over the last, since April, been supporting people who are at risk of COVID-19 in hotel rooms to limit the spread of COVID-19 in our community, again, amongst people experiencing homelessness, but also to limit the spread in the community at large. And I'm happy to report that to date, there was actually just the other day, one person who was experiencing homelessness. We did hear they tested positive, but they were not in the hotel programs that we had running. They were someone, I think, relatively new to the community, and they are now in a hotel and isolating properly. But just one person, I think, is a pretty amazing story for our community to tell and to be proud of. And it speaks to the great work of our homeless service providers, but also our ability to provide, private living quarters for people experiencing homelessness. So that's so crucial for us to understand and to embrace that, home is the solution for both homelessness, but also as a really important way to address this COVID-19 pandemic. So to talk more about permanent supportive housing, I will now introduce the next speakers, Julie Anderson and Colin Arnold. So I'll stop my share right here. And so I will, I'm happy to introduce Julie Anderson. We've been working together for a number of years now on trying to create more permanent supportive housing locally. So we can see that number go down to 0. And she is the Director of Real Estate Development at Virginia Supportive Housing. And she's been working with Virginia Supportive Housing since 2008. She's responsible for the statewide oversight of the Real Estate Development Department for VSH, with a service area in 3 regions of Virginia, including Tidewater, Central and Western Virginia, serving formerly homeless clients with low income and disabilities. Julie holds a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Virginia Commonwealth University and a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of South Carolina. Prior to working for VSH, Julie worked in the accounting field, and she is a member of the VHDA Supportive Housing Solutions Council and the 11th cohort of the Emerging Nonprofit Leaders Program in Virginia, in Richmond, sorry. And then Colin Arnold believes in design for all. For more than 16 years, he managed CHP Design Studio, a wholly owned subsidiary of community housing partners dedicated to providing affordable housing to low or moderate income individuals. In his career, Colin has contributed to the design of more than 50 affordable housing projects with a total of more than 3,200 units. In 2008, Arnold started his own architecture firm, Arnold Design Studio, dedicated to the design of affordable and sustainable communities. He is a former Frederick P. Rose Architectural Fellow. His commitment to service through design is reflected in his professional affiliations, accreditations, and accolades. He is a founding board member of the Southwest Virginia chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council, and he's a certified expert in community design, charrette facilitator, and has training and experience in the principles of universal design. So I'm happy to introduce them to you all, and I will let them take it away.
Thank you, Anthony. All right, and I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, do I need to swap that? Are you guys seeing
Yeah,
the
we
note
see your
slide?
notes, Julie. Yeah.
Okay. All right, is that better?
Yep, you got it.
All right, great. So Virginia Supportive Housing, or VSH, is a nonprofit organization. We were formed in 1988 with the mission to end homelessness. And one of the ways we do that, like Anthony mentioned, is by developing permanent supportive housing One thing I want to mention is that I think VSH is unique in that we do develop, manage, and provide supportive services all under the same roof. So permanent supportive housing is a type of affordable housing. It's targeted to homeless and very low income individuals. We find that they're both utilizing the services we offer at about the same rate. Permanent meaning that the residents sign lease. This is their own apartment. They can stay as long as they wish. And supportive meaning that supportive services are provided on site by VSH staff. Permanent supportive housing follows the housing first model, which emphasizes access to stable housing above all other needs. Since once an individual is stably housed, they can work with their caseworkers on site to address those conditions that cause their homelessness, such as mental illness or substance-related disorders. We found that permanent supportive housing works. Over 96% of our residents don't return to a state of homelessness. So this is a picture of one of our interior units at the studios at South Richmond. This is kind of a typical model for us. 60 to 80 studio apartments. Each apartment is a standalone apartment with a kitchen and a full bathroom. Kitchen has full-size appliances, a refrigerator, range oven, and sink. And the units come fully furnished with a bed, dresser, table, chairs, and a nightstand. Also, in addition to apartments, the building includes staff offices, community rooms, computer rooms, and fitness rooms. This picture from studios at South Richmond, this was an adaptive reuse project of ours. This was an old budget motel on Hull Street in South Richmond. We were able to convert it into 39 units of permanent supportive housing. Since that initial adaptive reuse, which was back in the mid-90s, we've gone back, we've built an addition and completed a renovation and expansion of the initial building. And Colin, who's going to talk next, was our architect for this expansion and renovation. But this is just a good example of why adaptive reuse works for us. We started with an older motel. It was affordable to purchase. We were able to utilize some of the existing structure and materials for some cost savings. And at the time, we were able to kind of see, who our neighbors were. So these are essentially infill sites. All right. And this is a picture of New Clay. It's the darker brick building on the right hand of the screen. This was our first permanent supportive housing development in 1992. And it was originally a brewery, one of the first breweries in Richmond. We were able to initially secure a ground lease for this development back in 1992 and turn it into permanent supportive housing. However, we were using the older SRO model. So it was 47 units, about 150 square foot each, which is really different now from the 350 square feet we're trying to build. And the units had a toilet and a sink. Showers were shared on each hall and kitchens on each floor were shared. The building also had some staff offices and 2 community rooms. However, a couple of years ago, we were finally able to purchase the whole site. And so we renovated and expanded it. So now instead of 47 individuals, we're able to serve 80 individuals. The units are about 350 square feet each. They are standalone apartments to promote that independent living that we're striving for now. Everybody has a kitchen and a full bathroom. The original building was a historic structure, so we utilized historic tax credits. And so in order to expand, we built this newer, lighter brick building that you see on the left side of the screen over our surface parking lot, as well as there was a burnt out warehouse pad behind the building that we built over. And because of the location, this is really close to VCU, kind of behind the Siegel Center. This is one of our most popular locations. It's within walking distance to a Kroger, and it's right off of the Richmond Rapid Transit bus line. And also one of my favorite projects. It turned out so well. So just quickly, this is the sources budget for New Clay House. And this is just to highlight kind of the new normal for our project budgets. Our developments are costing nearly $20 million with what you see here are about 25 different funding sources. So it's not easy. The largest funder is, of course, our low-income housing tax credits, but we utilize all of the affordable housing funding from DHCD, AHP funds from Federal Home Loan Bank, local sources, and a lot of private philanthropy, and then a low interest loan from Virginia Housing filling in the gap. The other thing I want to mention here is the project-based vouchers. They're just a necessity to be able to serve the homeless individuals with very low incomes and make these projects work on the operating side. So these are just some of our older adaptive reuse developments. Let's see, New Clay House is on the top. That's just another view showing that older portion of the building, which created some really interesting spaces. Studios at South Richmond. This is at post adaptive reuse, post addition, post rehab and expansion. On the bottom is Cool Lane. This is our newest developments coming soon. This is in Henrico County. It's a vacant assisted living facility. It's been vacant, over 10 years now. And we're going to work with Colin Arnold on this one to turn it into 86 one-bedroom and studio apartments. So this will begin in the summer. We'll start construction on this. It should take about 15 months. And we're finding, again, the budget is really similar to what I showed for New Clay House. Here's just a few other older projects of ours. Gosnold was a adaptive reuse of an RC bottling plant. That's in Norfolk. We finished that back in 2006. And I think one of the cool things about that project was when they started digging into the ground for some of the site work, the fill was actually RC bottles, glass RC bottles. And then the other side is Cloverleaf in Virginia Beach. And that was the adaptive reuse of an old skating rink. We finished that in 2008. And kind of as what seems to be the trend now, we are going to go back in a couple of years and renovate these, but we're also going to expand them to add additional units, take them from 60 units to 80 units. And last, I just want to leave you with a testimonial or a story of hope. So this is Kenny Payne, and he's a resident of the Crossings at 4th and Preston in Charlottesville. So Kenny says, in 1991, a handful of US chefs began embracing a culinary innovation called sous vide, cooking vacuum sealed food in hot water. Kenny Payne was in the kitchen with them. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the first people on the East Coast to use the sous vide system, he says. Payne's skills led to a successful career in the restaurant business, working in some of the most popular restaurants in DC, Richmond, and Charlottesville, and training aspiring chefs. The pace was fast. So when he began to notice some dizziness, he brushed it off. Then on the morning of April 21st, 2017, I woke up and my arm was numb. It was a stroke. He was hospitalized for a month and released. I had no income and had to leave the apartment I was sharing, he said. In a matter of weeks, Payne went from having a home and a career to living in a homeless shelter. Homelessness is a humbling experience. I didn't know anything about shelters or soup kitchens or food banks, but I did know how to survive. I had been in the Army. I had discipline. He secured disability benefits and began saving to get back on his feet. That day came when he learned about an opening at the Crossings. Payne describes how the Crossings provides him with a full apartment with a kitchen he uses every day and more. The staff brings in food from the food bank each week. If you've got an appointment with Social Security or anything to do with your health or finances, they help you get to the appointment. His firsthand experience and passion for cooking led to a project, after-school cooking classes for underserved youth. Teach them the basics so that they can cook their own food, he said. Considering that Payne began working in a kitchen when he was 14, those classes might be the beginning of another young chef's career. All right. So I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to Colin Arnold, who Anthony introduced just a second ago.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. That's, good morning, everyone. Let's see if I can do this. Share. Oh, hit the second button.
Colin, I have your slides ready if you want me to cue them. Oh, you got them. There you go. Yeah.
Did it work? All right. All right. Thank you. Well, I'm going to continue the theme Julie presented with adaptive reuse, and I have just a few projects I'd like to present to you all. This first one here is Armstrong Place, located in Lynchburg, Virginia. I think a lot of times we're finding buildings sitting vacant for an extended period of time, and just really looking for an opportunity for revitalization in the community. And this project was important to the community because it was a former equalization school of the civil rights era and had a strong presence in this community, but has sat vacant for many years. You can see outside of it's boarded up, it's been neglected, but we still maintained many of the historic features inside the units or inside the classrooms. You can see the old chalkboards are still available. But I mean, I think this building here offers an opportunity to bring some revitalization and beautification to an existing neighborhood. So in post development, post renovation here, some images of the restoration. You can see, we're looking at facade improvements, facade restoration, providing historic windows back to the building. This project used low-income housing tax credits as well as historic tax credits. But you can see upper right-hand corner a apartment unit that was once a classroom, but I think these classrooms work well because they have an abundant amount of light and they're very airy, high ceilings. And so there's a lot of uniqueness that is provided to these apartments that otherwise you might not have in a new construction. I would say, some of the challenges though are you can see the hallway down here that was designed for a school, not for necessarily the amount of residents that you'd have in this building. So you have a little more what I call core factor than you might otherwise have in a project. And then you just have to be mindful when you're, doing your pro forma and your operation projections that you can maintain and heat and cool those types of spaces. I think what was also unique to this project and a really benefit to the community was it had a gymnasium. And rather than that being the community room for the residents, although they had their own community space within this building, that was an opportunity for this customer, this nonprofit in Lynchburg to provide that facility for the entire community, the entire neighborhood, and it's been very successful. It is difficult, I think, to work with historic tax credits. I mean, it's not easy to repurpose a building while maintaining the historic character, but that challenge, I think, also becomes the opportunity because it's exactly those historic features that everyone loves and wants to see and really provide a beautiful place to live in. In these apartment units, we kept the chalkboards, so they're part of the features in someone's apartment unit. Move on to the Warwick. So the Warwick was it's another historic building. It was a hotel originally constructed in 1883 with a 1928 addition. It had been, as a hotel at one point, converted into some housing, and you can kind of see it was a bit dated before we got to it, and the residential units did not work out so well. This is located in downtown Newport News, essentially on the water, and so, I mean, this was a great candidate for permanent supportive housing because it was already designed as a hotel. I mean, there was already living units there. The building is, designed in stacks, so the plumbing and mechanical kind of work in your favor when you're trying to renovate this project. So in that regard, it made it somewhat easier. Now, we had challenges with the size of the units because as a former hotel, those would vary quite a bit, and just trying to make sure we could get all the living spaces and kitchen areas to work out was not easy, but we were successful. So as post renovation, again, doing extensive work to the facade to kind of make that improvement, make that another feature in the downtown area. So repairing the brick, repairing the copings, bringing back this exquisite front door in the lobby area. I mean, who wouldn't want to come home to that every day? And then we also had some opportunities to make some great community spaces that just needed to be uncovered and cleaned up. So that was a wonderful opportunity for us to take on for this project. And then I'm just going to get to our last project that Julie kind of touched upon, is Cool Lane. So as a former nursing home facility, it's a good candidate for permanent supportive housing because we already have, it's already laid out with interior corridors, with units that are there that provide an opportunity to make them into an apartment unit. In this case, we would take two of the nursing home rooms and combine them essentially into one unit. But this is about a 90,000 square foot renovation. So in of itself, that is a challenge. But here's what we have right now. It's been abandoned for quite some time. So the bad news is it's a mess, but I guess that at the same time is the good news because we're just going to do a gut rehab. I don't have to worry about historic windows here. I don't have to worry about historic tile. We're essentially will have a shell of a building that we can start anew. And what will be interesting about this project is we're going to combine both residential units as well as some office space. Virginia Supportive Housing is looking to have at least some of their, if not most of their office needs located at this facility. So what we're showing here is just sort of reconfiguring. We can start new. So I basically have a blank slate so we can do all kinds of fun things inside the units or inside the building, and just showing you some proposed vignettes here of some of the common spaces that we're looking to develop, some of the office area, back with some meeting spaces for office. We can take advantage of moving some walls, bringing in skylights to make an office area a little bit more livable and enjoyable. And then moving to some of the apartment units. These proposed apartment units will, they'll range from about 500 square feet to 700 square feet. And I think what's new in this project is we'll actually have, we'll have a bedroom at most of them. We do have some studio units, but these will have mostly one bedroom units. So they're essentially a new apartment unit. And with this facility though, just as we worked it out, we do have unique floor plans, which I think is really kind of nice. Not every unit layout is going to be the same. So there's opportunity for some variation, and we can get some unique views, some unique access to daylight and the outdoors, as well as the unit configuration, which different than perhaps a new construction, which everything may be more cookie cutter just because of the economy of that. Here's another option, another apartment option here. We're taking advantage of some of those floor to ceiling windows to bring in good daylighting into these rooms. With a strong emphasis on all these projects with accessibility throughout, whether that's fully accessible units or aging in place or universal design ideas. Okay, that is the limit of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. And thank you for getting us back on track at 11:45 exactly. Leave it to an architect to get it done right on time. Well done, sir. Hey, I just want to kick off a little bit the Q&A portion and give a shout out to Anthony. Looks like I've got a couple of realtors on there, and Abby Tammin is on. I attended a YPN Young Professionals Network event yesterday put on by Neil Williamson. And Anthony, we talked a whole bunch about this cool project you're doing at the hotel. Can you just take a minute and tell everybody about what you're doing? Because this comment about, you know, and it blew my mind, right? To fix affordable homeless, just put them in a house or put them in a structure. So tell us a little bit about that, then I'll let you kick off the Q&A.
Sure. Yeah, it's a really unique project that I just feel really grateful to be a part of and for the opportunity. So it's really kind of came about, I think, for a lot of reasons because of the pandemic and the unique opportunities that it afforded, but also the unique needs that it necessitated in terms of us needing places, private rooms for people to be able to stay in during a pandemic. And so it started with, partnership between CACF, Piedmont Housing Alliance, and Virginia Supportive Housing, of partners that wanted to do something. We saw an opportunity to look at existing hotels that, are in the community. And so we looked at a local hotel that was for sale, and we said, hey, what could this look like if we put together an opportunity to purchase it, use the existing hotel rooms as shelter in, right now, because that's needed during the pandemic. And then developing it to permanent supportive housing down the line to offer a more permanent solution for homelessness as well. And the ability for that to offer both of those opportunities is really unique, and just also the collaboration between these organizations, I think, is just inspiring for me. It's been the light in my life for sure over the past few months working towards this project. So yeah, it's really exciting. And the partnership also extends beyond just homelessness too. That's what I think is also so unique about it. And it provides immediate kind of solutions for sheltering. It provides permanent supportive housing opportunities for chronically homeless folks, and it provides also affordable housing units for the community in general, which we all know we need. So it provides the whole gamut for in that project. So I think it's really pretty cool, and
Thank you.
yep, hopefully it continues moving forward positively.
I'm pretty sure you're going to need an architect, and there's a really good one over there on the right corner of my screen by the name of Colin. He might be able to help you do that. So I do have a question for Colin and Julie in reference to the Cool Lane project. And oh, by the way, I'm in the sales and marketing business and real estate business. That is a cool building. So you picked a great name for it. Tell me about the public transportation at that facility, because you can't really solve homelessness without having some sort of public transport to it. So tell us a little bit about that component of that project. Whoever wants to chime in.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take that one. So there is a City of Richmond bus stop right outside of the development. I believe there's another multifamily kind of mixed income residential development further down Cool Lane. So we do have the access we need. In addition to that, I'd say the majority of our residents are probably walking, and there are some convenience stores, community supermarket really close by, as well as a really involved church right across the street from us who runs a really successful food bank program.
Cool. So I'm going to kick it back to Anthony, who's supposed to be doing the Q&A. So I took a little bit of chairman prerogative to ask the first question. So
Thank you, Keith. So this is a question for Julie. How do you protect against, basically kitchen fires or other hazards in the building related to cooking? And then also, what is Cool Lane? Is it an old school, or what is that building? So those two in particular.
Sure. So first, Cool Lane is it's a vacant assisted living facility. I believe it was built in the 70s and closed down, I guess, the early 2000s. And it's actually in Henrico County, but owned by the City of Richmond. So the City of Richmond actually donated that building to us. And then as far as cooking fires, it is unfortunately pretty common, especially if someone has been homeless for quite some time. Maybe they don't have the cooking skills anymore. So we do both prevention with, there's some special burners that don't really get hot enough to start a fire, as well as suppression. So they're the little range queen canisters. You may have seen them hanging from the range hood, and they'll feel the heat and kind of put a chemical out to put the fire out, as well as our fire alarms are hardwired directly to notify the fire department that there is a fire, so they can show up pretty quickly.
Got it. Thank you so much. So please feel free to continue typing in questions. I think we still have some time for that. But we also, I know we're planning on also providing email responses for questions should they come up as well. So you are free to submit those as well.
So not seeing any questions popping up. If they do, Anthony, chime in and read them out. I do want to give a shout out to Stacy. She couldn't join us today, but Stacy and her team and the staff at the commission and the Regional Housing Partnership are going to be reaching out to everybody. We have some pretty cool continuing of this series into 2021. So we're going to ramp it up with the number, but by my count, we have over 40 people on this call. So that warms my heart that we have people on Thursday afternoon or morning, whatever it is, to go ahead and spend time with us and do that. So please keep an eye out. We got some exciting stuff coming up. Any other questions pop into the feed, Anthony?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Thank God I can babble.
Oh,
Huh?
there's a few.
There you go. Somebody didn't want to hear me talk no more.
All right. This is a question, I believe, for the VSH team. What kind of financial and/or other support will you need to get this project to go forward? I'm assuming it's the Red Carpet Inn project. So I can also tag team that too. But maybe, I know you talked a bit about all the different funding sources. I don't know if you want to talk about what's still needed for the Red Carpet Inn on your side.
Sure. So it is a complex layering of funding. And so the first thing is that we're working towards a rezoning right now with the goal of applying for low-income housing tax credits in March. And that is just our big go, no go. We get those tax credits and we hit the ground running, applying for pretty much all of the funding DHCD makes available for affordable housing, as well as some of that other funding I mentioned, the AHP from Federal Home Loan Bank, any local sources, local housing trust fund sources that are available, and a lot of private philanthropy.
That's great, thank you. And on our side for the shelter, for the interim time frame, using the existing structure of shelter, we have support from the state and city and county, as well as some private funding as well to support the operation of emergency shelter. But we will need continued support moving forward because we are planning, should the project go forward, to be able to use that space for emergency shelter for 3 to 5 years at some capacity. So it's going to definitely be an ongoing fundraising need for us to support operations there. It's certainly a bigger operation than we have currently with our shelter operations. It's about 100 units. So it's definitely a significant change of how to do operations for emergency shelter. So we have a good base of support right now, but we are definitely needing to kick off some fundraising to continue operations there at Red Carpet Inn, should that move forward. So. All right, and then another question is, have any of the projects in Richmond taken a creative placemaking approach, partnered with any arts organizations to help the space feel more like home?
We haven't had a lot of partnerships with arts organizations in Richmond. We did kind of do a door decorating project in Richmond, where some of our residents and local artists decorated doors to kind of signify those doors to home for each of the units. And those were auctioned off. So we are showing one in front of the building that one of our residents actually painted. And I would say our big partnership is down in Southampton Roads. We work with a local art class at, I believe it's Wesleyan College. And they kind of look at the building and think of, what does this building feel like? What does the area feel like? and paint pictures to donate to the building that signify the surrounding area.
Cool, thank you. Another great question is saying that they're very grateful for this project, the Red Carpet Inn project, and they also want to remind the community to remember that this is a late or takes time, right? In terms of a intervention, and it's expensive. Is there energy and efforts to address housing instability, which is the biggest issue our clients face? And that's from Partners for Mental Health with Anna Mendez. And it's a great question. It takes time to develop permanent supportive housing. It's a good point. There are still things needed to address homelessness and housing instability in the immediate. There are efforts to address housing instability that are part of our homeless system of care through our prevention program, is kind of the main one that we use at TJAC. There's also, because of COVID, the rent and mortgage relief program, which is the local version, which is closing down with us, but also there's a 2.0, which is starting up with the state taking that over. So that's a good question. I think those are the only things I'm really aware of on our end. We tend to focus at TJAC on really the literal homeless situations and try to really create strategies to really end those. So that's why it's important for us to kind of focus development for new housing. But it's a really good point, and I think it's really important to just mention on this is that it's a continuum of need. People, housing instability, if that is not addressed, people fall into homelessness. It's definitely not a thing where, it needs to be in balance, and there needs to be things to address the whole gamut. So thank you for bringing that up. How long do most people stay in permanent supportive housing, and what kind of services do you offer?
Sure. So our average length of stay is about 4.5 years. Of course, we do have individuals that find that this is the level of support and affordability that they need for the rest of their time with us. As far as the services, so we do have those on-site case managers in each of our properties, and they help connect people with the community resources that are available, any other community services that they need. Sometimes it's making sure they're making it to their appointments, addressing any mental illness, as well as, sometimes people, even though they're single adults in our buildings, do have family elsewhere. And so maybe we're connecting them with their family as well.
Great, thank you. I know we're getting close to time, but Keith, did you want to answer that question about rural housing?
Yeah, just real quick. I just wanted to get out there. There's a reason why it's called the Regional Housing Partnership, and we are looking at it. We are looking at a regional area. So whoever chimed in the question about the rural, it is in front and center in our thinking, and stand by, and that may be another session in 2021. So I just wanted to touch base that, that is one of our goals, therefore the name regional. Christine, it's all yours. Thank you.
Great. Out of respect for everybody's time, I think we do need to close up. I would like to start with sharing some gratitude for this speaker series and for this particular series. So thank you to our panelists today. Really appreciate you, Anthony and Julie and Colin, for taking your time to be here today. Another thank you to our sponsors for the entire series, the Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors and Virginia Housing. And then a thank you to the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership and their events committee for the time and the expertise and the work that they've put into making this series possible. And then a final thank you to you all as participants for being here today and coming together around such an important topic. Anybody that attended today's session will receive a follow-up email that will allow you to provide us feedback on today's session, but also to help us brainstorm suggestions for future topics. The Regional Housing Partnership does intend to do a spring-summer educational series as well, a virtual series. So we would love to hear from you all on topics of interest and try to bring some people in to lead us in discussion on that. And then finally, we want to make sure you guys have a great day, but also a safe and a happy holiday coming forward. And here's to a happy and healthy and hopefully different 2021 than the 2020 that we've had. So cheers and thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Take care.